I think it's also important to note that technology democratizes information in very similar ways that the printing press did as well. And that has major implications. What that means for people who are in a place like New York City and what that means for somebody who's growing up in rural Kansas is really different, but important in both situations. I think the technology is going to allow opportunities for people who aren't the usual suspects on our radar screens to be engaged in Jewish learning and in Jewish content and in Jewish community in new and different ways. Whether that means that logistically things are more accessible for them, whether it means that they can find things with greater specificity so they're more relevant to their lives. They don't have to opt out of the rest of their lives to put on the Jewish hat and engage in Jewish education. And that the boundaries are really permeable. Right now, we expect individuals and families to affiliate and commit one institution or one program, and that might look really different when things are more permeable. One piece I wanted to, an article just to draw your attention to is, was published recently in Fast Company magazine. It was called A is for App. A is for App. This is a great article about the impact of mobile technologies on education, from very privileged, wealthy private school kids in Manhattan to very disadvantaged kids in rural Mexico and Eastern Europe. So I think it's a really great resource to start to think about how taking the learning to the people as opposed to requiring them to come to us is going to be a powerful hallmark of the future of education. And I think we do need to recognize that this is a really massive shift in culture. When the printing press was created, it was one piece of technology, but it sparked a couple hundred years of chaos, social, economic, political, and religious revolution from one piece of technology. The profession of a scribe essentially disappeared unless you're writing Torah scrolls, and more people became literate because printed material was accessible and inexpensive. And once you have a literate population, then they go to school and they participate more in community and in society. So I actually think that's a really great analogy for us to look at and think about how that applies to Jewish education as well. If we have one invention, technology, let's say, is the internet, right? And how that can democratize information and access. What is the sort of literacy that is going to encourage and support, promote? And when people are literate, what else does that make possible? I think there's huge potential here for Jewish education if we think about it in those ways. The change that will happen from that, like we saw in the printing press, is massive. Totally massive. It's not tweaking this or that or putting up a smart board. It's huge systems that are changing. And I think that feels big and scary and daunting, and it should. But I also think that as a community, we need to think about not just what is the risk of innovation or change, but also what is the risk of not evolving and adapting. I feel like that is not part of our conversation yet and probably should be. And that we need to embrace this sense of change and evolution, not only to survive, but I think we also have the potential to thrive in all sorts of ways that, as of today, are probably yet unimaginable.